Got it. Doubt anybody else is coming to this. So let's get started, I guess. Anybody have any status updates? Let's see. Dan, thanks for popping out that PR to change the volume labels. It's nice. We've had that was nice knocking out some of our older issues. Otherwise, my main status update is the next thing, which is release planning, which is that we are looking to do start CCB today. This is pretty soon after our most previous release, but that release itself was deferred by a bunch of weeks due to holidays, and I think Joe wanted to see some of the Buildpack registry changes go out, and it also meant I didn't have to change the calendar schedule, at least on the VMware calendar. So if anybody has any issues with that, we brought up in Slack yesterday. You can feel free to mention that now. But otherwise, we would go into CCB today, end of the day today, and then cut start with an RC branch, and then cut a release next Wednesday.
Quick question. If I got a bug fix in by the end of the day, would it go in?
Yeah,
Maybe.
but bug fixes we do during CCB as well, right? With advisement and etc. But I think features we try and get in now. So I'm trying to knock out a thing for releasing it to Apple Silicon, which maybe we do anyways during CCB because that's more distribution and less directly feature work. But that is one thing I'm trying to knock out. Okay. And if no one has anything else, we can go into the needs discussion issues and pack. Don't know. Should I share? How should this work? Let me share. Okay. Everybody can see? So is open as label. Okay, so then there's this environment variables not accessible at runtime. This is actually an interesting issue that would be nice to get some feedback on. Someone wanted to assume that when you would set --env with pack, those variables would also be accessible at runtime and not just during the build process. I think Javier had a discussion with him. And the question was either, should we just make this more explicit in our logs to make it clear that it's just a build time and not runtime, or is there actually a feature to have them, to make variables that would be passed to the image?
Do we have a current solution for passing runtime environment variables? Like, would it be, I guess, a build pack that could take environment variables? And I mean, you could totally work around it that way, but that seems not fun. But as far as I can recall, there's no mechanism for transposing variables that you want set on the runtime image.
Yeah, this also could conflict with existing build packs though too, right? Like the launcher would depending on how it's loaded, the launcher would overwrite potentially one that you set when you do a pack build. So even if it's set at the image, it would be overridden by the launcher if a build pack does set it. So I think there's, I don't know, it feels like a confusing feature to add to me.
I hear that. Makes sense. So I will.
I for
Take
one would like to have this feature, right? Like if I'm envisioning something like let's see a Java Spring application where it makes use of environment variables per, let's say, even profile, right? And I have multiple profiles, the worker versus, I don't know, web processes, then I think right now we already have that capability for Buildpacks to be able to specify environment variables, runtime environment variables per, what is it called? Yeah, per process. So I guess I don't see why we wouldn't be able to set those same type of configuration elements at build time, or yeah, like from a user's perspective.
I do feel like it's better. I'd rather not have, multiple things. I'd rather reduce the feature surface because it can be done with Buildpacks currently, or at the very least, I assume it should be a pretty simple. You can have an end build pack. I don't know if some of those exist already. Well, there is a proc file build pack in Pacato, right? But that's a bit different.
I guess what I could envision is the project.toml, right? It already has a build.env, a run.env. Per process doesn't seem too much of a stretch, but then to Jesse's point, it would just be the, what is it called? The order of operations, like which one takes precedence. But I
Yeah,
feel
I
like we
mean,
solved that for a bunch of other stuff already.
Yeah, I imagine anything the user sets takes precedence over anything else in the chain sets, right?
What would that, how would that work with the launcher? Because the launcher is reading them from like the file system. And if we set it on the image itself, then the launchers, whatever the launcher loads, is going to take precedence, right? By default, unless we make a change to.
Could it not be a contract where the platform provides this information to the lifecycle process creates a file, and then the launcher reads from that file? So therefore it's not strictly on the image.
It's as if the build pack contributed that variable.
Something like that, right? But it would not mandate a build pack.
Mhm.
I guess
Yeah.
to me, it just doesn't seem like a build pack should be necessary for this functionality to exist.
Yeah, I think I mostly would be against it being on the image itself. But if it's not on the image, but rather in the image, like a build pack, then I think I would feel indifferent about that.
On the image, you mean like in the like the labels and
Right.
metadata?
Yeah,
In the
yeah,
config, yeah.
because of the whole launcher situation, I think that would make it especially
Yeah.
confusing to figure out how that would work. But if it was in the image as a file, then, or at least during the build process, and then got scooped up by lifecycle, then I would be more in favor of that.
Yeah, so this would be like a platform spec change is what you're imagining, Javier?
Yeah.
Like a platform could opt into, or pack as a platform to provide something like that?
Yep. And then I guess that would also hopefully include the Project Tomo extension spec changes, right? Where you could set that information there too. So I guess maybe, to kind of close off this issue conversation here, since I don't think that it's the appropriate place to resolve it, is this issue would likely require an RFC, right? Label it as such. And then there does seem like the change of copy is a very trivial change that we could at least do to make it more clear.
Is there an M
Great.
build pack that exists today that we know of? I mean, it'd be pretty easy to write one, but
We should check our registry.
There's a Heroku build pack for it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I think that's my problem and concern is that, like, yeah, build pack could exist, but now I have to figure out how to like inject this build pack into the order. I have to make sure that it it plays well with the appropriate stack that I have on the builder. And so it just, I don't know, it seems really icky to something that seems like a basic
Counterpoint
necessity.
is if you use Pack to develop your images locally, but then you push it up to KPack eventually, the behavior will now be different because KPack doesn't have. If it's a build pack, it would work the same because it would assume read from a file that's a part of your repo. Whereas passing it as command line arguments to Pack, that's not going to translate to KPack or Tecton.
And
But
I
if
think
it's- if
that's
it's a
why the
spec
Project
change-
Tomo is the binding contract for everything, right? And I think that
Yeah.
that's why the Project Tomo over time I could definitely foresee as being part of the core spec, just because it does seem to be like that reproducibility concept that's that you could carry throughout various build tools or build implementations.
Yeah. I think I was just asking about the build pack as a potential workaround for an issue, even if
No,
we
it also
want to
could be
make the RC
simpler.
change.
Once we get like the inline build packs, or assuming that that's made, then that could also probably be a simpler thing. If you can make that work with any stack and just have it be echo, these environments. Yeah, I don't know. Definitely up for discussion. But I think that for this issue, I will at least keep the issue for the copying thing, but then note that the feature would require an RFC. This, Javier said you mentioned we should sync up. This is about being able to update the Docker URL, like the Docker mirror registry, in order so that you can use something when you want it to be for public registry, but then if you're an enterprise, you should be able to do it with, all right, I want it to be from this GCR.
Yep. Yeah, I guess I don't know exactly what the follow-up items are, other than working through the issue.
Yeah, I don't
Last
know.
I recall, like I think here, just a lot of context or knowledge transfer is necessary. But other than that, last I discussed this at one of the working group meetings, there didn't seem to be a reasonable alternative, and like nothing that is core to the project. And so it's like a pack specific solution.
Okay. That makes sense. Then there is, so not so much discussion needed on this.
I
I'll take that
definitely
out.
don't think so, but it's my take.
It's going to be a probably larger one though. At least to work through everything. I don't know how much longer. What else is on the agenda? Buildpacks CI and Terraform Cloud. How about we go through those, and then if we have time, if people want to go through that, we can go through more discussion issues.
Sounds good. Yeah, I could share my screen if that's okay. So this is more or less an announcement of, and honestly gathering feedback at the same time, because I do know that a lot of this started as kind of an experimentation, and now it just kind of has become a little bit more solidified. So in the past, we've had, essentially, what is it called? GitHub runners. And we've been using Equinix, Metal, which previously was called Packet. And these are all things that are provided by the CNCF project, right? And we've been maintaining them to some regard manually. And so one of the things that we were playing with is Anthony from the Windows team had created some Terraform scripts for a Windows LCAL. And right now, in a lot of the work that I'm doing, I needed an additional runner, for Red Hat Enterprise Linux with OpenShift, so I could test some of the Tecton related stuff and set up CI that way. So in part of that, I started playing around a little bit more with Terraform and trying to like really find a more automated or managed solution versus like all the manually set up runners. And so with that, one of the main problems with Terraform is being able to share the state of the machines. And looking at it was a Terraform Cloud, which is essentially free for, I think, up to 5 users. But the way that I've set it up right now is one main user, which we would, like everybody that has access to the infrastructure would have access to that account. And so far, if you look at how this is set up from a usage perspective, there's a script to authenticate with Terraform that uses LastPass. So if you have, again, access to the infrastructure, you have access to LastPass. So you authenticate against Terraform Cloud, you do Terraform init and apply, and then this is what's going to essentially sync our state across every individual. All the Terraform scripts are pretty much set up for Windows LCal and Red Hat Enterprise Linux OpenShift. And one of the things that I could foresee is in the future adding more, I think adding WCal, which we have, and right now is still manually managed. And lastly, what is it? I was gonna add one more thing. Oh, totally lost it. Anyway, yeah, so again, more or less an announcement. I don't know exactly how we feel about it. I'd like some feedback if there is any ideas or anything like that.
The contributors all have access to the LastPass. Like part of this requires LastPass login. That's open to all contributors, right?
It's available to all identified project contributors, right? So,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, obviously,
I don't know, Jesse and Terrence, if you are all able to get to LastPass. I heard there were some issues maybe in the past.
I think I still have issues with LastPass from back when we founded LastPass back in the day. I still get emails every week about activating my LastPass, but I can't activate it.
I've never tried. I can be a guinea pig if you want me to sometime, but I have not tried, nor have I needed it yet.
Yeah, so I guess, that was the part that I was missing. So right now, this is integrated with Pack and Tecton integration repo, right? So it's like per repo. I don't know what the lifecycle is using or the implementations team is using, but I would think that at some point we might want to convene in using the same methods for any custom runners.
I think the lifecycle uses custom runners right now.
It does or doesn't?
No.
No. Okay. Yeah. So if there's no need from that side of things, then maybe it's moot for now. And I do know we want to get rid of having to manage or maintain any custom runners. So I think WCal is one that we're trying to get rid of. We've just had some difficulty in some of the tests that we have.
yeah, WCal, maybe LCal also, but at the very least, OpenShift is definitely going to be useful for Tecton testing. So I assume that's going to still be maintained.
Yeah.
I know you said you also, is there a similar setup to start, let's say GKE, if that's used for the Tecton testing?
Yeah. So on this other side, we do have a GKE setup for Kate's. This was more intended for manual testing because we do want to like tear it down to save stuff. Like there hasn't really been a need to formally have this long-standing environment. Although if we do need it, we can set it up. But it's very possible.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for making the change. This definitely worked. Yeah, it definitely worked well.
Did you get to try it while I was out?
Yeah, I logged in. I was able to get the information. I had to make some changes in order to get LCal working. This ran like the Docker by you have to manually share drives in Windows with Docker in order for the test to work. And otherwise I had to like click on individual directories. So it was always failing because when we make test directories, they're always random. So I had to just kind of share a certain path with it. I don't know if that's possible to bake in or not, but that was at least something that was causing the LCOW test to fail.
Yeah, that is on here as a manual step. I don't know if maybe in all my testing I had missed it, but you should be able to share just the root C drive and it should work.
Yeah, so I could do it manually. I don't know whether there's any way we can programmatically do that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's just a statement for Docker, but automating Docker desktop is painful, to say the least. And so like that, and then being able to switch between Linux containers and Windows containers, like it's just not ideal.
Okay. So
Glad we got
alright.
that on the recording, Javier.
Hey, I didn't say anything too terrible, just saying it could be improved.
Just switch to system D.
That's all I got.
Okay. I don't know if we can, for the next 5 minutes, go over some of the other issues, or if we can just call it now and just, keep an eye on it as the week goes forward. What do people want to do?
I do wonder if maybe instead of running through all the issues, maybe we could start adding them to the agenda beforehand. So at least we have some context on what the conversations may be. So maybe I look towards the maintainers to add items to the agenda.
Makes sense. I think anyways, I need to, I haven't pruned the GitHub issues for quite a while. They could probably use some cleanup. So I'm planning on doing that at some point soon to see what we've already fixed, etc. So once I do that, then I can actually gauge whether or not we need discussion on these things.
Right. Cool. That'd be nice.
Okay. I guess otherwise I'll, with that, I'm happy to call it now. Fantastic. In that case, see you everyone.